We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality show with a touch of recovery. A reality show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who shares.
I'm joined here by my co-host and author of Shaped by the Master's Hand, Lolita Robinson.
Well, how are you? And I've got to get some more material here. So how are you doing today?
Welcome to another day of Joy in My House.
Welcome. Seems like okay, I can hear now. So how are you doing?
Good, I'm hanging in there.
Okay.
Hanging in there, spending a lot of time with my daughter and my granddaughter.
Okay, and how is that going?
It's a handful.
I'll be honest with you. She's strong-willed, huh?
She really is. So she takes a lot of attention, a lot of
time.
But then me and my ex-girlfriend, now girlfriend again, reconciliated. So that was a big deal.
Okay, well, that's for another show.
That'll take up a whole month of episodes.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, when we have our topics, so hanging in there, I guess we'll be.
But yeah, as long as we. I say we, but as long as I put God first,
right.
God tends to kind of work things out. But it's a tough walk. I think of a lot of people out there who are struggling right now with the disaster, and our prayers go out to what's going on in Texas.
Yeah.
It's intense. I saw.
Do you have any family there? Or
I do not.
Okay.
I'm lucky that I do not. But Paul Obel, who sits on the board of directors, he's from Texas, has family out there. So it does affect us all in one way or another.
Right. So is Paul going there, or
no.
I know he's going to be involved in getting
and that's what he's
happening.
been doing.
Yeah,
but it's interesting to me. Joel Osteen, who's a big minister and pastor, got a lot of slack for not opening his doors right away during the floods because he has a big congregation and a big building there.
Okay,
and they gave him a lot of slack for it, and I just feel that we're so negative. We're so quick to judge and so quick to be negative. And a lot of the Muslims, they open their doors right away.
Okay.
And instead of giving those Muslims or those people that were opening the doors praise, they started talking bad about the person who didn't.
Okay.
And I was in church today. I go to the Cause Community Church out in Brea.
Right.
And Pastor was joking about that. He calls it hate book instead of Facebook because a lot of it's so negative.
Right.
And instead of praising those people that are doing well and that are doing good in the community, we tend to focus so much on the negative.
That's very true. Well, the enemy's
so
busy trying to bring division and trying to take away the positive things of those that are, like you said, getting out there and helping out and donating money and time. And the enemy's always doing things to cause division and strife. But I know that Joel Osteen is going to hang in there.
Yeah, so he opened his doors and he's helping out now. But it made me, I saw the media just, again, the media has always been very negative. They like to control with fear.
Right.
But I just thought it was disappointing for the people that were doing amazing things out there. We should be giving them praise.
Well, bless the Muslim brothers and sisters.
Yeah, that were opening out there. Good for them.
Well, it's bringing the community together. And I think that the media doesn't like to see unity.
Right, because
because so many people are coming together and they haven't even, people are not happy with our president. Okay, that's your opinion, but whatever. A lot of beautiful things have been coming from this. Unfortunately, when bad things happen, there seems to be more unity and with people, but people don't like good news. So I'm glad you just brought that up because we do.
And that's what our show is about here, ladies and gentlemen. Joy in My House. It's the joyful stuff, even in the midst of our challenges, even in the midst of tragedies.
Right.
We like to spread something positive and hopeful because I know I needed that as I was going through my recovery process and still am. I'm still in my group.
Me too.
I need to hear hope.
Right.
And my hope lies in Jesus. So I hope that out there, those of you who are listening and viewing are finding a little bit of hope through our amazing guests.
Yes.
Through our topics, and hopefully just through this platform that we get to spread the gospel on.
I'm excited about it. People ask me, well, what are you guys doing with the show? I mean, are you trying to... We're open to whatever the Lord wants to do, but I think the thing that's been blessing for me is, like you said, we have been faithful.
Right.
We've been showing up. We bring whoever God wants. And if the Lord wants to advance it and take it where he wants to, he can. But I've been learning a whole lot every time we do a topic.
Well, we had a great show for you last week, ladies and gentlemen. Barb Defoe and her friend, who's a partner of hers, Lou Castillas. They were both financial specialists.
Oh, yeah.
And they really had a great word for us and a lot of knowledge on how to deal with our finances that we sometimes don't know, especially
Exactly.
when it comes to retirement or an illness in our family. And when we're Christians, we have to lend our gifts out.
We do, and we have to be more business minded. I have a friend of mine who's in finances, and so she's reading the book so that she could break it down for me. But that's one area where the Lord says, be not slothful in business.
That's right.
Okay, and we need to take care of stuff, especially me in the watching my mother with long-term care when you get elderly.
Right.
These things need to be in. So I hope people will go back and look at the show.
Yeah, look at that show.
I was blessed how the Lord is doing. I mean, he's just bringing such a well-rounded information and people that are on our show. On a sidebar, have you heard any more about Raul's family, how he's doing, the young man that was...
I have not. I hope to go visit them, hopefully.
Yeah.
Not this weekend, but maybe the following weekend and go see how the family's doing.
Where do they live? Where's his family?
They're here locally, but their house was up in Lake Tahoe.
Oh, okay, that's where Raul
And that's
was
where
living.
they passed.
Okay.
That's where they drowned. And,
Okay.
and our hearts and prayers go out to Raul's family.
Yeah, we haven't
and
forgotten you.
his children, and it's a tough thing when tragedy hits. It really is. It really is.
Well, congratulations to you and Ashley, and I think Ashley's inspirational in why we have a guest today, right?
Yes, it is because of her, and we'll talk about that when we come on. But
All
we
right.
have a great show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. But I want you to link up with us. I want you to find us on Facebook /Joe in My House. If you like the page, you receive up-to-date lineups of guests and information. We have an Instagram page where you can follow us on Instagram, and a Twitter page where you can tweet us with any questions or comments. We have a great show for you today. We have an in-studio guest by the name of Pastor J.R. Gonzalez. He's the author of I can't believe I can't say Cultural Architect, Changing the World by Design. You're not going to want to miss.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Joe in My House. I want you to stay tuned. We're going to come right back.
Many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
a reality show where nothing is left unsaid,
And no one is insignificant who says it.
exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality show. I'm joined here by my co-host and recording artist, Lolita Robinson,
Very good to be here. Let's get this show started.
and our in-studio guest, Pastor J.R. Gonzalez. Welcome to the show. Pastor is the author of Cultural Architect that we're going to get into today. But we always like to let our audience and viewers know how we met. We met through Ashley Trevino, who's obviously my girlfriend and founder of Limitless. She referred me over to you. I do extensive research on our guests. You know, I get their bio, I read their testimony, I look at their, IMDb or whatever it is that I do. And we just reconciliated. So when she sent me and said, you have to have Pastor Raul Gonzalez on the show, I was like, I don't want to. No.
Yeah, I don't know who Raul Gonzalez is.
I mean, Raul. I was telling
He's
Raul
just being
Gonzalez
hard-headed.
has been on our heart. He's a gentleman that was on the show who actually passed away in Lake Tahoe with his wife. They just had a
Okay.
baby.
Wow.
He was the director of Children's Hospital blood donation.
Okay.
So it's a tragedy that happened. But you coming on the show, J.R. Gonzalez, it's funny because I try to control and manipulate things because I'm an addict. I want it my way. I want it when I want
Yeah,
it.
why did you say no right off the bat?
Right off the bat, I was
Just to
like,
be
no,
hard-headed?
Ashley, I don't want to deal with it. No. But God has the perfect person for the show every month.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does.
And as long as I submit to him, he takes over. This isn't our show. This isn't my show. This is God's show.
Right.
So Ashley came back and said, you really need to have him. And I already had been praying about it and praying about the guests on the show. And sure enough, God booked you for the show. So
Amen.
thank you for
And we're
coming
looking
on.
forward to it. And he's just being hard-headed. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, and you know, we talk about that, how when we let God lead, he does amazing things. And that's what we're going to talk about in your life, Pastor. You've really submitted to God, and under him, he has really blessed you and given you a bigger platform.
Yes, he has, you know, and that's not always the easy thing to submit our will to God's will, you know, but I know there was a lot of wrestling going on because I, too, in my own way, am very aggressive and very, you know, what's the word? You were talking about some children being
Strong-willed.
strong-willed. So
Okay.
God had to wrestle me to the floor,
Oh,
and
really?
little by little, he actually took away some of the things that I've loved just so he can get my attention. And now he's got me at a place where I have nowhere else to look but up.
All
There
right.
you
So
amen.
here I am today, and with you wonderful people, I'm looking forward to wherever God leads us next
Well,
few
me
minutes.
too, and I want to
Amen.
say, yay! I'm always impressed when pastors come on, especially, and their families are with them. When
Yeah.
their wives and their children are willing to come and sit and listen to me, that says more than anything because they live with you, and they know you, and they know whether or not what you're saying is authentic. So you have beautiful daughters, and your wife is absolutely gorgeous. So
Thank
we'll
you.
take it from there.
And what I always say that if there's any men out there that want to date my daughters, I have a pool in my backyard. They're going to have to walk on that water before I let
There
them
you
take my daughters out. But I just joke around. But thank you for the
Or they're going to
compliment.
get drunk or get drowned.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Yes,
Amen. I mean that. It's true, though.
No, it really is. It says a lot about
Yeah,
the guests when they have the love and support of their family.
that's right.
Yeah.
But let's let the audience and viewers get to know you, Pastor, get to know a
Sure.
little bit of your family of
Sure.
origin. So we always like to ask, you know, where were you born?
I was born in Northern California in a city called San Jose, which is better known now as the Silicon Valley,
Yeah,
or in my
really.
neighborhood, as we call it, the Skrilicon Valley, because you need a lot of money to live there.
Okay.
Right.
But that's where I was born and raised
Wow.
back in the, well, I don't want to give my age
There
away,
you
but it
go.
was some time
You
ago.
look good. That's all right.
And,
yeah.
you know, it was awesome growing up in San Jose. At the time, it was a lot of fields, so there was a lot of farmer work. I come from that type of background where my
Okay.
parents were from Mexico, and all we
Migrants,
knew
is
how
that
to
what's
do.
Considered migrations? Migrants?
My mother was an immigrant.
Okay.
My dad was born in Texas, but that's all we knew was farm work and working in the canneries. Of course, it's changed tremendously since then.
Right.
It's a lot of the Yahoos and the Googles and the Facebooks
Yeah.
are all taking over Cisco systems. So it's changed a lot, but that's definitely where I was born and raised, and actually, it was an awesome place to grow up.
Siblings? I know. Well,
I am the youngest of 6.
Oh, wow.
I have 3 older brothers and 2 older sisters.
Okay.
And I like to brag about this because when my mother passed away back in 1999, I had the honor of preaching at the service. And I said this, that even though my mother wasn't perfect, 3 preachers came from her womb.
Wow.
So she may not have been perfect, but she did something right by
She must have been
sowing
a
seed
Yeah.
into our lives.
Yes.
And my brothers, I had 2 other brothers that are in ministry, and myself. My other brother's a big Raider fan, so he kind of missed the boat a little bit.
Okay.
But you know, and my sisters, you know, they're just wonderful moms, and you know, raising their children as well. So I'm not going to say my family was perfect. In
we
fact,
don't want to hear that. We
I
wanna
will
hear
I
the
will say
truth.
this, that we probably put the function in dysfunction.
Oh.
But you know, at the end of the day, man, my mom and my dad did the best they could to
That's
raise
right.
us based on the atmosphere and the climate that was given to us in our family.
Well, you know what? I'm thinking about that. Sounds like to me your parents were hard workers.
Hard workers.
Okay, so they weren't into this like our generation is more into being more loving and kind of compassionate, but my mother's generation and that they didn't play. Look, they had food on the table.
Right.
They took you to school.
Right.
They lived together. So is that kind of is that how they were?
Yeah, they taught us work ethic.
Right.
They were good examples of getting up every morning, and
There you
regardless, even when they were sick, they would get up in the morning and do what they
Right.
had to do to
Right.
make sure the house was taken care of. And you know, my mother was, as I believe everybody believes it about their mom, but my mother was an amazing cook. And since I was the baby of the family, I was really protected
There
by
you
her from my
go.
older brothers and my older sisters.
Wow.
So in some sense, I was spoiled a little bit by her.
Okay, all
But
right.
at the end of the day, I thought, based on her, even her limitations, she did the best she could to raise all 6 of us, as well as my dad.
Amen. So
And I feel the same way, with my family, same thing. Maybe emotionally they weren't
present.
Available,
right.
but man, did they provide for us. My mom, hardworking. I remember, just being picked up from this little Catholic school that she had to volunteer just to pay the tuition, because they would offset the tuition if you volunteered there. And then on top of it, then take me to my martial arts class and wait for me outside the hours. I remember sometimes I would ditch the martial art class and I'd go outside and I'd be on the phone, and then she'd drive around and catch me and tell me, you better get back in there.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, well, why? But they were really hard-working people. They were paying the tuition for this, for that, and really providing.
Well, that's important, because we are going to talk about probably the parts that are not perfect, like you said, that were dysfunctional, which led to maybe some of your challenges. But we want people to know that we understand our parents did what they could, the best what they knew, but it doesn't mean that that the enemy didn't use maybe some of the things that they weren't able to do. So
and that's what I wanted to touch on. Were you born in a Christian home? Were you born in a
You know
religious
what?
home?
I say this jokingly when I'm out ministering, but there's truth to it. My parents were more like seasonal Christians. And what I mean by that is that we'd go to church, let's say in the winter, but come summertime, we'd be heading to the Spanish dances and hearing all the cumbias, as they call it, and all the different bands.
Yeah.
So as a kid, I just remember us going to church seasonally, but yet also, enjoying the other fruits of life, so to speak.
Okay.
But, that's the way I remember as a kid. But it was enough.
Was it confusing?
Not necessarily, because, we were a close-knit family. We stuck together, and we always had a good time. We always found ways to enjoy each other. But when I saw that, there was enough of God to sow the seed that I'm reaping today,
Right.
the harvest that I'm reaping today. So there was enough there to help me get along in life, and to have a fear of God in my heart. Because I remember as a kid, this is very interesting, that as a kid, I would have encounters with God, and he'd come into my room, and all I could remember is just weeping in his presence, and as a little boy, and God speaking to me.
You can't go that fast through that. That's a lot of meat right there. What do you mean he came in? Like his presence?
Yeah, I always had a pure heart for the Lord. I'm not going to say I'm perfect or I walk on water, because I was far from it.
Right.
And I did go through my times of, the party life and whatnot, but we'll get to that later. But I just remember God just visiting me and telling me how much he loved me. And even though there were some things that I experienced as a kid, like rejection and even insecurity, God was always there to remind me that I was created in his image. He always was there to remind me that my parents eventually divorced when I was at a young age, but he reminded me that he became a father to the fatherless.
Amen.
And that was just an amazing thing, because it really helped me as a teenager, and it helped me into my adulthood. I got married kind of late in life. I didn't get married in my my late teens like my brothers and sisters. I kind of saw what they went through and the mistakes they made, and I made sure I wasn't about to go that route. So I didn't get married till later into my late 20s, close to my 30s is when I said I do. So I believe it was just God's timing and him teaching me what he had to teach me as a young man, a young boy. And to believe it or not, sports was a big deal in my life.
And that's what I wanted to talk about, that time in your life.
But then get back to like you said rejection and stuff. I mean, you just opened up so many wonderful avenues here. Why did you feel rejection? Because your mother had so many kids? Or was there drinking in your family?
Oh, there was lots of drinking.
With your mother and dad?
There was lots of drinking, and as my daughters would say, a lot of 420 going on too.
Okay.
Which is a street term for marijuana, but there was a lot of that going on. My brother even got into the Raider fan, even got into selling that stuff. But anyways, so yeah, we experienced that as well, and the rejection came, I believe, because the divorce factor. And being the youngest, I still remember the day. I was coming from a what they call a Royal Ranger meeting, which is a Christian
church.
Boy Scouts, so to speak. I was coming from a camp, and I still remember walking up to my townhome that we lived in, and my dad was sweeping the driveway, and I remember him looking at me, and with this terror in his face, and he says, "Your mother has left me for another man." And I just remember as a little boy, my heart just dropped.
Wow.
And I just remembered how painful that was. And even thinking about it and even regurgitating it even now brings a pain to my heart. But that opened the door to obviously insecurities, rejection, all the different things that the enemy would use to bring somebody down.
And see, people don't think that's a big deal today, 'cause since so many people are divorcing, it just seems like, kids get over it, but it's huge, isn't it?
Oh, it's huge. You know, I would tell anybody who's out there that wants to, that's contemplating divorce. I'm not saying that, hey, you're going to go to hell for being divorced, but I will say this. Please take into consideration the whole ball of wax, not just the relationship between you and your wife, but take your children into consideration. And I'm not saying my marriage is perfect. You know, me and my wife we have our ups and downs. I love her with all my heart, but I'm committed. And sometimes when I felt like, hey, I'm going to bail out on this one, I think about my children. I think about my son. I have a 23-year-old son. I think about my daughters. And I say, no way am I going to have someone else take my job from me. So I've been committed to my wife. We're going to be celebrating 24 years next week.
Congratulations.
11. So that's pretty awesome.
That's huge. Yeah. And I'm glad you're saying that out there, because we're making it like it's no big deal, but it is. I mean, it really does change people's lives. I was a product of divorce too, and I divorced myself. So I know it's not a very pretty thing, and I'm glad that you're saying that to remind people out there, stick in there. I mean, now if you have people that are abusing people, and you know that we've had people who've had to get away for their sake of their life. We're not telling people, but you know, God says carry that cross, and when He says carry that cross and be committed, that's what He's talking about, to stay in there for the long haul.
And I just want to reiterate that this is a voice of grace. I always tell people, it's not how we start, but it's how we finish.
Amen.
And I know in life we get beat up, and we were talking about that earlier. We got scars in our lives, and I've learned that scars prove two things. Scars prove that you were hurt, but also prove that you are healed.
Amen. Right.
So I would say,
I like that.
take what you got and keep moving forward. You're going to lose sometimes, you're going to win sometimes, but just keep getting up. The Bible says that a righteous man or a righteous woman, right? We got to be politically correct these days. That a righteous man falls 7 times but gets up. So as long as we have that attitude that we're getting up, I'm telling you, you're going to finish the fight strong.
I'm so glad you said. I forget that when we keep falling, that, well, what's the matter, God? Where are you? He never promised us that we would not have these struggles.
No, He didn't.
I am so glad you said that. I forgot about that scripture. That is so true. Well, before, I know Joel has other questions. Were you raised with your mother and her new situation, or did your father raise you guys?
No, I was raised by my mom.
Okay.
Later on in my informative years, the high school, junior high and high school years, you know, but I always kept relationship with my dad.
Okay. All right.
He didn't do anything personally for me to dislike him or hate him for that matter. I just knew that it is what it is,
you know. Disappeared,
and he moved back to Texas.
Right.
So I would reach out to him. There was a time even in high school that I moved out to Texas with him because I just wanted to be around him.
Yeah.
But you know, I knew my mother needed me more at that point, so I moved back. So I stayed about a year and a half out in Texas. So yeah, you know, I just I love them both. They're no longer here, both of them. I wish they would have met my daughters because or my son, and they didn't have a chance to do that. So someday when we go on high, we'll reunite. So looking forward to that.
Thank you, Pastor, for opening that, because I know Joel's going to ask you other stuff. Now, just kind of.
Well, I wanted to talk about that. You know, you struggled through a divorce. How did you cope with that divorce? You know, we're going to talk about a little bit about dysfunction, and you know, a lot of us go through these tragic situations in our lives, and when we don't have the proper tools, we tend to act out in them. What was one of your coping mechanisms during this time?
Well, without trying to sound too religious, man, but those were the times when God would show up in my life and help me out, man. I mean, I would cry out to Him, and like I said, there was enough of Christ there that I knew I can call upon Him. Remember, He said that He would never leave us nor forsake us. And I'm not trying to be too religious about it, but that was just my journey.
That was your experience.
But you know what's amazing is because I was such a good athlete growing up. Football, I was a quarterback. I was a baseball player. I pitched. I played center field. I was just, what happened is that side of my life attracted all kinds of people.
Oh, I bet.
And I was very discernful at a young age at who I would allow inside my circle. And though my friends weren't perfect and we partied and we did our things, but there were certain limits I always had in my life. Like I would use drugs, but I wouldn't use these types of drugs. And I always was very careful. And I would drink, but I wouldn't take it to the extreme where, you know, they'd find me laying down in the street somewhere. So I always had these limitations, and I believe it was because of my encounters with God as an early age.
Were you going to church? Were you in youth groups?
I did.
The Royal Rangers.
I did attend church. I did attend church. That's one thing that I learned, that no matter what, I'd be out at the clubs till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And guess what? I'd be up by 8 o'clock in the morning getting ready for church because it was in me to be there.
Amen.
And I mean, I'd go, there's a Spanish term called crudo. I'd be all crudo, which means I would be all hungover. But I'm sitting at the front row of church listening to the pastor talk, you know. And
the word is the word.
Yeah, these were things that were just implanted in my heart as a very young age. But I think sports had a lot to do with me.
Gave you that outlet, gave you that stability, right?
It did.
Is that a good thing, or could
Well,
Satan use it? Did he use it, or was it a good thing to ground you, or?
Well, I'll tell you what. Like most of us who are addicted in their own way,
Okay.
we do look for that acceptance,
That validation, that
with
acceptance.
that validation. And when I was pitching, and I led my little league teams to championships 4 out of the first 5 years I played, and I was the star pitcher. That brought validation. People would come to me and tell me how great I was at a young age, and I had aspirations at one time to be a baseball player, but I tore my rotator cuff, and that was over. But God had other plans, obviously. So receiving all those accolades and the MVPs and whatnot, that soothed one side. But I knew there was another side, and maybe down the road in this interview, we'll get to how God even had to take me in dealing with the dark side of my soul.
Oh, I think I love
And
it. Wow.
that's pretty awesome there.
Okay.
And,
Well, let's talk
that's
about then,
awesome.
your college years, because growing up in an immigrant home where you know the farming life, what made you want to go to college? Because you did end up having a passion for college.
as a young kid, I remember watching television, and back in the 70s, they used to have special, like the Donny Osmond show.
I remember
There were all these
Lolita
shows.
knows.
They know all these
Throw
shows,
me under
right?
the bus, hey.
Well, one
there
time
you
I was
go.
watching a show on television, and I saw the Oral Roberts singers singing.
Wow.
And they were talking about how great Oral Roberts University was. And I remember as a little boy watching that, and I used to say to myself, man, I would love to go to that college someday. And I grew up, and to be honest with you, I didn't go to high school. I went to school high.
Oh, wow. I never.
So,
I got that real quick.
I didn't quite make it through high school.
Richard's cracking up. Richard, did you go to school high too?
I didn't make it through high school. I ended up dropping out late in my junior year because
you
of
for being
these
so
mistakes and
honest.
decisions I
Thank
made.
you for being so honest with us.
To make a long story short, I was working for a real popular exterminating company, killing bugs. And it was my birthday, and I remember sitting in the truck of this company car, and I said to myself, God, now what? I had dreams to go to college someday, but I didn't make it through high school. Now what? I was already up in years.
Right.
And what happened was I remember the Lord speaking to me while I was in that truck, and he says, I didn't call you to destroy bugs. I called you to destroy the works of darkness.
Oh, wow.
And I called my wife because I was already married.
Yeah, we got to find out about how Deanna, right? Is that her name?
Yeah, Deanna.
Yeah, how Deanna came into the
Well,
picture.
she keeps me balanced, man. Because
I
sometimes
bet.
I'll let faith take me to another level, and she's like, "Hold on, hold on. Let's think about these things." So,
Okay.
I was listening to a friend. We went to go visit a friend preach, a real popular evangelist back in the '90s, and he called me and my wife out. And he says, God's calling you to Oral Roberts University. He began to prophesy to us.
Oh.
But not only did he prophesy, he did something that is very unusual. And what he did was, he says, I want us to raise an offering right now for this couple at a big mega church. So they raised an offering. They raised a few $1,000s. And he goes, let's sow a seed into this. He goes, let's make something happen for somebody else, and God will make it happen for you. And they gave us a big check, a big sum of money. And I was like, wow. And Deanna goes, okay, we have to go if that's what the Lord is saying. So we ended up at ORU.
She went too, also.
She went with me.
Did you meet in high school? Because we brought Deanna. How did you meet Deanna?
We met during youth conferences.
Okay, so Deanna
I was a
knew the
bass
Lord.
player. I was a big bass player. That's why I kind of like the jazz you guys were playing here earlier.
Yeah.
I'm a big jazz guy, but I was a bass player growing up. That was another thing that I would dove into. And I was up there being the guy playing. I was up there being the guy playing the bass, and and Deanna was one of the groupies. Just kidding, babe. She came up to me and she introduced herself to me, and
Go ahead, Deanna.
that's how we began to talk. And then we
Okay.
stopped talking, and about 6 months later, I receive a phone call out of nowhere, and it was her. And she says, "Hey, remember me, blah, blah, blah." And I say, "Yeah." She goes, "Hey, it's my birthday. Why don't you come and celebrate with me?" I said, "Sure, let's go." And that's how we got the ball rolling on that. And to this day, now 24 years later, we're still together. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure she had to pray you through some things, though.
Oh, man.
I know she did.
Yeah.
I know she did. Amen.
You know how that says for better, for worse, boy. She got most of the worst.
Wow.
But she was able to help me out, get through some things.
There you go.
When I wanted to
Amen.
talk
Thank you
about
for
that,
sharing that. I
during
love
your
it.
college years, it's got to be difficult, especially somebody
Yeah, going to
who
ORU, huh?
didn't finish high school, to
Yeah.
create those habits. Because I tell my children, my daughter's at Mount Sac right now, and my son's in his senior year at his school, and he wants to go to a good university, maybe the University of Irvine. And I tell him, you got to create good habits because it's very difficult. I know it was very difficult for me. I dropped out of high school my junior year as well to run my martial arts studio.
Right.
And then going back to Fullerton College, it was difficult for me to sit down and have to do homework. I didn't have those habits. So I wanted to talk about, for the listeners and viewers out there, how was your college years, especially having your wife as support?
Right.
You know, God gives us a helpmate. She was one of your helpmates. Let's talk about that.
Great question.
And then going
because
to ORU, that's in Oklahoma, right?
yes, it is.
So
It was
that's a whole
definitely a
nother
culture shock.
ball.
Definitely culture
Yeah,
shock.
really.
Growing up in L.A. and San
Yup.
Jose, where with Latinos everywhere.
There
Over
you
there, it
go.
was just completely different. But that's a great question. I remember my first semester showing up, and I remember the first day of school, and we weren't used to the cold weather because out living out in Southern California. But when we got there, the first day of school, I remember walking out to my car, and our doors are frozen shut.
Oh. Wow.
So I knew it was going to be one of those kind of semesters.
Okay.
So,
So God's blessings sometimes are covered with, how can you say it? I mean, it was a blessing, but there was a lot of trials involved too,
no
right?
doubt. So
Yeah.
my first semester, I remember taking 15 units. And
That's a lot.
I remember flunking the first semester 4 classes out of the 5 I had, right?
Wow. Was that because you took on too
Because
much?
it's because I didn't know
Oh,
what
you
I
were
was
still
doing.
high schooling it?
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought they told me I had $1 million smile, and I thought it would work with the professors in it.
You thought the smile would do the
You know
homework.
what I mean?
get it.
So I went up to the prayer. They had an amazing prayer tower at ORU, and I would go in there and I would pray and say, God, I don't know if you called the right guy. I said, but this education stuff, this higher education stuff, just not working for me.
Yeah. This is
I said, but if
serious.
you help me figure some things out, I'll finish strong. So I was put on academic probation, and I went to summer school, and all those classes I flunked, I took them in the summer, and I went from getting an F to God helping me and expanding my brain, and I got an A on every one of those classes.
Wow, amen.
Because
Yeah,
God
that's
turned the
huge.
whole situation around. So
Well, and you got serious too. I'm sure you realized, okay, this is not funny now. You got to buckle down.
now, for those of you who are viewing me on television, or on internet, although I look 27, I'm not. I was in my early 30s when I went back to school.
Amen.
So there
Look
was
what
a
you
whole lot
said.
of discipline I had to learn,
Right.
and sacrifice, and I had to learn that quickly because I wasn't about to move my wife 2,000 miles away from Southern California
you guys
just
stay on the
just to fail.
campus?
No, we lived at an apartment off the campus.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you
So
probably had to work too, right?
we did. I worked at a bank, and my wife actually worked on campus, which is another miracle in itself. She worked on campus, and some of the benefits of her working on campus helped me get through school. So it was awesome. It was awesome experience. ORU, those it only took me 2.5 years to get my bachelor's degree
Oh,
because
you're
I literally
kidding.
went day and night, took no
Wow.
time off.
Wow.
All summer, the whole time I was there, and we had a 2-year-old son.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the kids were probably coming then.
They weren't here yet,
But your son was.
but my son was a little guy, and yeah.
Wow. But
Well, it's amazing because I was going to talk about, how did you feel God helped you? But he was in the midst of everything that you were going through.
Everything.
The challenges, the praises, the successes, the turmoil, the cold.
and how
yeah.
was he with you? What can you say to somebody when people say, well, what do you mean he was with you?
Well, one thing that I believe that God allowed me to get around with some powerful men of God.
Thank you.
When my wife worked on campus, she got me a job working as a driver at one of the big conferences in Tulsa. And in that conference, I was allowed to drive Bishop Jakes around.
Oh,
and pull,
you
and
just
pull
said
from
the
him.
word right there.
I was
Wow.
allowed to drive around
Wow.
a good apostle friend of mine by the name of John Eckhart,
Oh, wow.
Michael Pitts, and I got to meet and allow these men to pour into me during those
Because
times.
that's before they really hit.
Yeah,
Bishop
yeah.
Jakes hadn't probably hit his pinnacle
Yeah,
then.
he was
up
yeah,
and coming.
he was up and coming. Carlton Pearson had
Carlton
given him the
Pearson,
platform
yes,
to do what he did.
Yes, he
Helped
did.
him in that. I can't say.
No, the Lord
Gave it
used
to him, right,
used-
but yeah.
yeah.
So
right.
during those times, seeds were sown in my life to think a lot bigger than I thought of myself, and it just gave me the confidence to be able to attack certain things, knowing that God
Were they
He
praying
promised.
for you?
They would pray for me. They lay hands on me. I mean,
Oh.
they laid hands and put so much oil on me as if they were deep frying me. You feel me? So there was a lot of oil being poured out there, but it worked.
But look
it
at you
worked.
now. That's right.
But you're saying something that's important. Okay, now most of you young men probably won't be able to come around that kind of those gentlemen that are so seasoned in the ministry. But it's important to have male wouldn't you say male accountability?
Yes,
Male
yes,
support?
yes. And I can't give enough credit to my wife, who is willing to go through hell and high water with me. And, she was the backbone of it all. And I know it's a saying that everybody says that behind a great man is a great woman. No, she's on my side. She ain't behind me.
There you go.
She's on my
Amen.
side,
That's
fighting the good
excellent.
fight of faith with me every day of our lives, every day.
Aw.
Because we've had to fight for everything
I
we've
wanna hear
gained,
that. Thank you.
everything we've gained in this season. So,
walking with the Lord, He doesn't just give us things, does He?
oh no, he don't, and don't.
Okay,
In fact, I
there you
tell
go.
people,
Yeah.
most people, I don't know why, but when they receive a prophetic word, they want to sit back and watch the word
and
come
just
to
come
them.
to them. That's right.
I don't believe that. I believe if you work the word will work. So you got to work it.
That's
You
right.
got to work the word that God gives you, the prophetic word that God gives you. You can't just sit back, because what does the Bible teach us? That faith without works is
It's
dead.
dead, yeah.
So you can receive all the prophetic words you want, but if you don't know how to work it and
right.
put yourself in position to receive the blessing, then you're going to be waiting a long time. For those of you who are single out there and you're waiting for that special someone, you need to do some work and get yourself out there
Okay.
so that you could be seen.
Right.
right.
You feel me? He ain't gonna come. That Prince Charming or that Wonder Woman ain't gonna come knocking at your door while you're sitting in your room watching ESPN and eating Twinkies. You're gonna have to put yourself out there and
Yeah,
trust the
and do
Lord.
the
You got to
work.
work towards those things,
Yeah.
and you watch God blesses what He possesses.
Oh,
Amen.
wow. You said,
Amen.
whoo.
Well, I
Praise
wanted to
the
talk because
Lord.
God wasn't done with you yet.
No,
you got your
man.
bachelor's
Right.
In
from
2
Oral
years.
Or
Roberts University.
So they took you without having a high school. Did you have to go back and get your?
I got my GED.
Yeah. So
you
tell
know.
tell the audience.
Yeah,
how
I went
they-
back
Yeah.
to, I think it was called Van Nuys Adult
Nice.
Education,
Okay.
and I got my GED in a couple weeks.
Okay.
And then it just happened quickly. After I sent my paperwork in, about a week later, they accepted me.
Okay.
Wow.
So somebody out there, you have no excuse.
No.
You can go get that GED and just okay. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to fill
And
that
that's
in.
how God,
Yeah.
was opening those doors, was setting everything up, was always there with you. Because what I wanted to talk to you was the opportunities. Once you submitted and you dedicated and you were disciplined and you got your bachelor's of science, He opened some doors.
It was
he did.
Bachelor of Science.
Is a Bachelor of Arts,
Arts,
A Bachelor of
in,
Arts,
in
okay.
theology.
Okay.
You know,
Very good, yeah.
with an emphasis on evangelism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the doors have been open to me. You know, people don't ever underestimate your bachelor's degree, no matter what it is, because God will use something as simple as that to open tremendous doors
right.
for you.
Right.
And my bachelor's degree obviously is a theology degree, but I had to go to work for a long time before I actually stepped into ministry. So my bachelor's opened up doors for me to work in the communications world and whatnot. So it helped me to get that higher earning pay.
Okay.
Obviously, so I was doing that until God opened doors for me to pioneer a church, which happened in 2004. We felt the Lord called us to the North Hollywood area to start a church. And you know what's interesting, and I pay this to I owe this to my upbringing, but God always seems to send me and my wife into places that have spiritual hostility. He don't take us into those nice
Right.
places where you see angels
Right.
with their harps playing. He takes us into deep, dark places, and he says, I'm going to shoot you into those areas like an arrow to bring deliverance to a people. And everywhere we go, there's always that spiritual hostility. But God has designed us to and prepared us for such as times as those. But
And I think that's so profound
does he
because
prepare
God
you?
did
Yeah.
prepare you through your upbringing, through some of the challenges you face, to be able, like you said, college was a culture shock from Southern California to where you went. The
Right.
weather itself.
Was that a hostile environment too?
nah,
so
that was
that was-
easy peasy.
Okay,
Easy
but
peasy.
once you graduated.
But as
and
far
went-
as the
yeah.
mental warfare of having to overcome, well, I never graduated from high school.
Right.
I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. You have all
Satan's
these
always
things that are
telling me
against
stuff.
you,
Right.
and you had to overcome it. You had to overcome it, and you had to overcome it.
Well, are you going to get to the point? I mean, I don't want to go ahead of you. Oh, well, is he going to get to the part of the dark side of his soul? Is that coming
Yes.
up?
Well,
Okay.
that's the next thing is
Yeah.
what did you struggle with during this change? Because then you get the opportunity to pioneer this church.
Right.
How did the enemy attack you during those times? Because
Well-
God, the enemy doesn't want to see you spread the gospel.
You know, I love the body of Christ, and I
But
just
there's a
think that-
but. Is there a but there?
But you know,
I know.
it's interesting how church folks will be used by the enemy to rip you down. And the crazy thing is this: is that if Peter, who walked with Jesus, who saw Jesus do miracles, who saw Jesus set captives free, who saw Jesus raise the dead, yet Jesus had to turn around and tell Peter, Peter, get thee or Satan, get thee behind
Get
me.
behind me,
Obviously, because it tells us that if the church folks ain't lined up with the will of God, you do leave yourself open to
That's
be
right, to
used
be
to
used by the
bring
enemy.
hardship to somebody else. You know what I mean? And that just comes with the territory. So during these times of pioneering, I had to deal with a lot of warfare going on. I mean, I had to deal with witches and warlocks. I had to deal with people that operated under a spirit of Jezebel. I had to deal with a lot of different stuff in that area. Obviously, North Hollywood is a pretty perverted little area.
Right.
So I had to deal with the perverted side of that city as well. There were times I'd come to church, and there'd be chopped off chicken heads at the door. And I
Wow.
said, what does that mean? And that was just people telling us that are into Santeria,
Yeah.
that they know we're there. And that's crazy because I think if you are making a spiritual impact in the city, trust me, not only is God going to be glorified, but the enemy is going to take notice that
right.
you're piercing the darkness.
That's
Exactly.
right.
And that was just something that told me that, you know what, devil, we got your attention.
Right.
And there were times I would do a prayer walk throughout that city, and literally witches would come out and call me by my name because they knew me. And I just knew me and my wife, hey, we just girded ourselves up and said, hey,
Did you have a prayer community in your
we-
church, the pastors and
I had
intercessors?
intercessors. I had built, God had given me the grace to build about a 30-member intercessory team at my church.
Wow.
Okay.
And I spent a lot of time pouring into leadership and telling them the importance of praying. But not only that,
You better not go without prayer. Are you kidding?
right? And a lot of people in the church, this is interesting because a lot of people in the church underestimate the warfare that we're in.
Right.
And you could read, and it's in my book,
We talked
you
about
could
that,
read
yeah.
throughout Paul's writing from Romans all the way to his last book. He talks about warfare in every one of those books, and yet we don't pay attention to that. Wasn't he the one that says, hey, be sober, pay attention, for the enemy's like a roaring lion? Well, the
right.
word sober literally means pay attention. So I taught the church folks, we need to know that there's a war going on.
We just talked about that 3 weeks
We just had a
ago.
show on spiritual warfare.
I-
So it's amazing.
We're gonna have you come back and do something on that because I'm serious.
No doubt.
Because it's
No
not
doubt.
being taught in the church. I'm sorry. We are lackadaisical in terms of. I came up in the 70s and the 80s, and there was deliverance ministries all the time. We were talking about, it got a bad rap because people are talking about deliverance ministries, but we've lost that. We've lost that because
Yes,
we
we
are
have.
in a battle. I mean, you're saying stuff is like, man, it's like water to my soul. It's the truth.
And all of this has been preparing you because this was a long time coming, this book. Because you have authored a new book called Cultural Architect, Changing the World by Design. Now, before we get into the book, tell us about how this came to be, this book.
I was watching church television, which is something I don't do much these days, but I was watching church television, and there was a pastor on there, a local pastor here in Los Angeles, got a great church out here. And when they introduced him, they didn't introduce him as Pastor so-and-so. They said he's a cultural architect. And it just rang right through my spirit. So it's not an original term. I can't say I
I've never heard
take credit for it.
But praise the Lord.
But I
yeah.
heard it on television. I said, you know what? The Spirit of God began to tell me something different about the actual term or meaning of cultural architect. And what I did is I began to meditate on it. And I realized that because we're created in the image of God, and that we have Christ in us, and we have the power of the Holy Spirit and the power of God's word, that we truly have the ability to change the spiritual atmosphere and climate, whether it's in our family, business, workplace, education, the entertainment world. That's some place where God is slowly but surely, I didn't go looking for it, but it came looking for me.
Right.
So these are the things that God showed me, that you, with me on your side, can change the spiritual climate and even the culture of something if you just allow me to work through you. So that's how the book came about.
Amen. Amen.
So is this like autobiographical?
No, it's
Or just,
kingdom principles. Kingdom
okay.
principles that have
Stuff
worked
that
for
They
me.
have worked since you've been in these environments and the warfare and what to do and how to pray.
Exactly.
Amen.
It's all in there. It's all in there.
Amen.
Well,
And
ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick commercial
Woo,
break.
I'm
When we come back, we're going to talk more about cultural architect, the author, Pastor J.R. Gonzalez. You're not going to want to miss. This is Joy in My House, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to come right back. Stay tuned.
We know there are many choices in internet radio, and the staff and host of LA Talk Live would like to thank you for choosing the internet's hottest destination for the most eclectic sound and invigorating talk. This is LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio,
with a touch of recovery.
a reality show where nothing is left unsaid,
And no one is insignificant who says it.
exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Joy in My House, inspirational reality show with a touch of recovery. A reality show where nothing is left unsaid.
And no one is insignificant who shares, and woo!
And I'm joined here by my co-host and author of Shaped by the Master's Hand, Lolita Robinson.
Thank you, and I am learning so much today. Let's get going again.
And our in-studio guest, Pastor J.R. Gonzalez. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's an honor.
You have just authored a new book called Cultural Architect, Changing the World by Design. And before we left, you had mentioned a little bit about the book. You had mentioned the title, but what made you want to write a book?
That's a good question.
What made me want to write a book is my inspiration truly comes from my family, my wife and my children. And
They just applauded you during the
yeah.
commercial, yeah.
I wanted to leave something for the next generation, and the legacy, because of the type of background I grew up in. You know, I know my dad had a desire to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, he couldn't overcome certain things. But I wasn't going out like that. I said, you know what, God, you've given me a brain. You've given me, you've touched my life. You've anointed me. I want to leave something for the next generation. And it's not just for the next generation. It's for anybody who would pick up the book. But I just wanted 30 years after I'm gone, somebody's going to pick this book up, and it's going to inspire them to take their game to another level. And the principles that I wrote in this book are kingdom principles. And there's a term in the church that's hasn't been used a lot, but it's called what we call the fivefold ministry.
Oh, I haven't heard
that
that
is
in a long
found
time.
that is found in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 11.
Right.
And it talks
Priests
about
and the
that
prophets,
Jesus,
yeah.
who gave gifts to man, and he gave some to be apostles, prophets,
Right.
evangelists, pastors, and teachers. And what helped me design this book is that I realized that everybody in the church, they accept pastors, no problem. They accept the evangelists, no problem. And we've seen such a powerful wave of the prophetic movement in the last 10 years where it's everybody's a prophet and everybody calls themselves a
Right.
prophet and and that's cool. But very rarely do you hear the term apostle.
That's
And
right.
the reason why I believe, because there's been a lack of teaching in it, and there's also been just a lack of revelation in it. So what I wanted to do, because I've had the privilege to be around apostles, great apostles, and they were very strong in their message to the point where it would even offend people because they were so dogmatic about it. I said, God, give me something that will make it more user-friendly for somebody to
Right.
to swallow this term. And that's where I came up with the idea, or God gave me the idea of cultural architect. And it's an apostolic term, but I wanted to make it easy because I just believe that if the church, who I believe these are the 5 major pistons of the church, and what I mean by that is I'm talking car language. When you have a great Maserati or a new Tesla, and let's say it's a 5-cylinder and only 4 of them work,
That's
you're not
right.
going to get the potential out of that car,
There you go.
right or wrong,
Right.
weak or
That's right.
strong, right?
Yeah.
So with the fivefold ministry in the church, I believe that if we work together, understanding the role of the apostle, understanding the role of the prophet, the evangelist, the pastor, and teacher, working together to equip the church, to bring the church to a place of maturity and advance the kingdom, I'll tell you what, truly the church will become
That's
an
right.
unstoppable force. But that's just the beginning of the book.
Oh,
And I
that's
just wanted to
awesome.
lay down that foundation and make it more user-friendly for the next person to understand the role of how the fivefold ministry should work together.
Well, isn't more the apostle? Isn't that kind of those who Paul was the apostle? Wasn't he like starting of churches?
That was part
That's
of what
part
he
of it?
did, but their mindset's a little bit different.
Okay, I have
They're
to
more
read this.
military-minded
Oh,
than that of a pastor. And this is not to put down a pastor. I love my pastors.
it's
I
different-
love
it's
my
different
pastors.
gifts.
They're very loving, very caring. The one that took over the church that I left has a pastor's heart that is so phenomenal that I was like, dude, I'm horrible as a pastor compared to you. But because my mindset was different, I had more of a military mindset. I had more of a strategy mindset. I had more of a equipping the saints to be warriors. And that was more my mindset. So I do bring that out a little bit. But again, I try to make it where it's easy to swallow.
oh, I love that. I
So,
never,
you know.
Oh, very
Well, let's
well
talk
said.
about that. Why don't you let us know what can somebody get out of reading this book? What is somebody going to come away with?
You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say this, that if you pick up Cultural Architect, you will experience what I call a growth spurt.
Okay.
And tell us what that would be.
Man, I
A
like
growth
that.
spurt is this.
Talking about a 1-minute speech, as they say.
The
That was
Apostle
great.
Paul says that we are to go from faith to faith and from glory to glory. I believe that as Christians, we do go to one dimension to the next dimension. But how can you transition into a new dimension if you haven't figured out what's going on in the dimension you're in?
Oh, amen.
So I believe that you grow, and this book will allow you to grow, and it will even expand your ability to think kingdom-minded.
Right.
And I believe that this will help you grow in your walk with God. It's not going to be something that gets you to a place of all-time maturity, but it's
Right.
going to help you in your walk, and it's even going to expand your ability to receive new revelation from God. Because I just believe as God's people, as Christians, we should always lead the way, whether it's in entertainment, whether it's in government,
Wherever you're at.
whether it's in the media, whether it's in fashion, whether it's in Hollywood. I believe that God has given us the ability through Christ Jesus and the Holy Spirit to lead the way in everything that we do. And that's what cultural architect's all about.
Well,
Amen.
something else that you said that really, I would love to hear someone teaching. Military techniques are always fascinating to me. So the fact that you brought out the military, I think that's so lacking in the church in terms. I'm always interested in special forces and the Green Beret. That's got to be kind of what the intercessors are, wouldn't you say?
Great question. And I'm going to tell you why. Paul wrote this, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God for pulling down strongholds." The word warfare in its literal Greek means this: apostolic career, military lifestyle.
Wow.
What is
Say
the
that
Apostle
again.
Paul is saying? Apostolic career, military lifestyle. What is Paul trying to say? That being a Christian, it's a lifestyle, but it's also a militant lifestyle.
right.
So there are things that you're going to have to fight for. Remember when Paul told Timothy, this is the prophetic word you received. Now you got to fight for your prophetic
Right.
destiny.
He did say that.
Well, I just believe that when you are after a destiny, obviously there's going to be some level of warfare coming
Right.
to you. So you got to be able to fight for your prophetic warfare. And if you don't know how to fight, get under somebody that's going to teach you how to fight. And I've had the privilege of being under men of
Yeah,
God
you did.
that taught me how to pray,
Yeah,
that taught
buddy.
me how to go after the things of God. Not that I've used both the intellectual side, but I've also said, you know what? If I'm going to advance in this thing, I'm going to have to learn how to fight for my prophetic destiny.
Oh,
Amen.
amen. Wow.
Yeah, that's good, right?
Well, you
there.
heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Cultural architect, changing the world by design, by Pastor J.R. Gonzalez. You can find more information on his Facebook under J.R. Gonzalez or J.R. Gonzalez Ministries.
And I have one more question. 'Cause-
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just keep feeling the Lord's was birthed out of a certain place in your life without going into real deep. Did you have to battle forces in your
Addictions?
own life?
There are things that I've had to go through in life that are things that I've experienced. I was, without getting into too much detail, but I was molested as a young man and by another man. And it just took me into a whirlwind of other stuff.
Okay.
Which, like I shared with you off camera, right now is not the right time for
No,
me
it's
to
not,
release
but the
that
Lord
word,
just-
but it will when it's God's
it's
timing.
time.
He's continuing even at my age to continue to bring healing,
yeah.
in that area, as I've allowed him. That's the tough part.
Yeah,
as
that's
I've
it.
allowed him. But at the end of the day, I've been able to use those tools to help somebody else.
There you
Amen.
And God, during that time of, I took some time off. The Lord had me deal with just some dark areas in my life that I didn't even know they were there.
Right.
It wasn't until He got me to a certain point,
Right. That he reveals those.
and He said, "Mijo, son, I want you to give this to me now." And it sometimes, most of the time, it was the hardest thing to do.
Yeah.
But by God's grace.
Amen.
And you know what's amazing is that where I go and preach, the power of God moves and people are being healed and
Heck yeah.
delivered
Yeah.
because of
What
what
you've
God has
experienced.
brought me through.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you know, I've had to deal with some real dark things in my life.
Amen.
Being molested myself, I feel like what the Lord has done in terms of what I was talking to the church about a week ago. If He doesn't heal those areas, if we don't allow Him to get in there, then the enemy can use it
Can use it. That's
in
right.
a powerful way. But the fact that you've been willing to speak that out, there's so many people who have been molested, male and female. That's the main weapon that Satan has used to bring people to their knees.
Yep.
So
And-
what you're sharing is powerful.
And it's, I'll use a sports term. As you know, most athletes deal with athlete's foot. And athlete's foot is basically fungus in your feet
Right.
that spreads while it remains in the dark.
That's right.
So it isn't until
Whoa.
You bring it
you
to the light.
bring the light, bring in the sun. I'm talking SON, and it zaps that fungus dead in your life. But you got to be able to bring it to the light in order for there to be change.
Oh,
Amazing.
Pastor, wow. Wow.
Pastor, I want to
I'm
thank you for
reading it
coming on the
today.
show.
Thank
Oh,
you for
yes.
having me.
Take time.
Amen. And your
The
daughters
show
and
is
your
coming
wife.
to a close.
And Ashley, thank you. And thank you for listening to the Holy Spirit.
Yes, I submit under him. But we like to ask this of all of our guests. The name of the show is Joy in My House. The premise, the joy that we have in the midst of our challenges, in the midst of our praise. We got to ask you, what does joy in my house mean to you in today's day and age?
Well, first of all, it means that I got to meet two incredible people today, and I thank you for that. But joy in my house means that when Christ is the center of your home, the center of your marriage, and the center that of raising our children, and we do our best we can, and as we do that, that's where the joy comes in of seeing your children. May not be perfect, but they don't keep me up at night. They really don't.
Amen.
I don't have to worry about my children out there tripping.
Amen.
They're very respectful and honorable to me and their mother. And to me, how crazy it would be if I'm trying to save the whole world if my children
That's
ain't
what I'm
acting
saying.
right.
There you go.
So we did our best, and that's what brings joy in our house. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, yes.
You did.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Pastor, thank you for coming on the
Wow.
show. Ladies and
You
gentlemen,
did.
you want to find out more regarding Pastor J.R. Gonzalez, you can find him on Facebook, /J.R. Gonzalez or J.R. Ministries. This is Joy in My House. Catch us live every Sunday here at noon with life-changing stories and talent that will inspire you. God bless, ladies and gentlemen. Have a blessed day.
I got joy.
Thank you for tuning into LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network, original reality radio, and crafted for your listening and viewing pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Joy in my house, joy in my house, joy.